Welcome to the Boxing Source Podcast, where we go over the latest news in boxing and react to all of the fights that happened in the past week. Now, let's go to our host, J.R. Bell. Yo, what's up? What's going on, everybody? We are here for July 6, 2025, here for the Boxing Source Podcast. Big thanks for everyone that's listening live, and then also they'll be listening to the replay that'll be on podcast or audio form. There through multiple platforms, including Spotify, iHeart Podcasts, also Amazon Music. You know, it'll be available for all of those here as well. But we got a number of things here that we're going to be talking about here on this particular podcast, man. And I wanted to see here if I could, try to get a few things to cover here on this one here, as we got multiple topics. I had like a conversation here with, of course, a lightweight contender of sorts here. So we're going to be talking about that. And we have, of course, two big events that's happening in New York City here coming up this weekend. So we're going to try to cover that as much as possible as well. So we want to go ahead and get that done here on this particular episode of the Boxing Source Podcast. So, I wanted to definitely go over all of these things here. And, if I have, anyone that's, chiming in when it comes to the live chat here with through YouTube or whatever, y'all got any thoughts on it, you'll be able to share that here on the live chat. We'll be able to bring it up and I'll, have responses to that if it's there for y'all and everything. So we wanted to, definitely talk about a few things here on this. So I wanted to, jump on this here real quick, you know what I mean? Because we wanted to get to the bottom of one of the hot topics out there when it comes to the lightweight division. Now, first off, I wanted to talk about this right here, man. So you had Abdullah Mason. It says that Floyd Schofield ducked the smoke when the fight was offered. Okay. Now, this stems from, of course, from a few months ago, when it had the possibility that Abdullah Mason and Floyd Schofield could get in the ring and have a fight, but of course, we've seen what happened there. You have Floyd Schofield locked into a fight there with Tevin Farmer. And, Floyd Schofield Sr. says that they had a 5-fight deal with Golden Boy Promotions. And then on the flip side, you had Abdullah Mason that had his fight over in Norfolk against Jeremiah Nakatila. And now, as we know, Abdullah Mason is lined up to fight Sam Noakes for the WBO welterweight title. So, it's still big things here for Abdullah Mason. He looks like he is next in line to, fight for and potentially win a world title. But, that as far as like a big topic of conversation was Abdullah Mason and Floyd Schofield. And yes, I already know about, what happened some time back. Somebody, put up a video on Fight Hype. I'm gonna just say somebody. I have an idea of who it was, but I'm gonna just say somebody for right now. You know what I'm saying? But it put up a video on YouTube there had a sparring session there with Abdullah Mason and Floyd Schofield, and they had a lot of buzz and a lot of talk there, right? But I had to, go ahead and have that conversation with Abdullah Mason, and that, took place on Friday. So this was on part of the interview that I had with with Abdullah Mason when it comes to the whole thing there with Floyd Schofield Jr. So I'm going to see here if it is able to, be here on the side, just queuing up real quick. I bet. So here it was, man. This is part of a conversation that I had there with Abdullah Mason, and I brought up the whole thing there between him and Floyd Schofield Jr. So let's see. Let's run it real quick. Like talk about more of the topics there with you, Abdullah Mason. Recently, there was a video released there of Fight Hype and everything like that. It put out this thing here of you doing work with Floyd Schofield Jr. and sparring. Now, months ago, there was some buzz about you and him potentially having a fight, but Schofield signed a promotional deal, multi-fight promotional deal, and had his fight here with Tevin Farmer. Now, I know your theme is that you have an appetite for smoke. So would you like to mix it up with Schofield Jr. after this year?
One thing I can say is, they ducked when we did send them an offer, but, yeah. But I'm focused on my title right now. But anybody, who's willing to step in the ring with me, I'm definitely, would love to make any of these fights happen. Like you said, I got an appetite for smoke for sure.
Yeah. So, man, all right. So there you go. There you have it. You know what I mean? That's what Abdullah Mason said there. You know what I'm saying? Because you had all that talk. Of course, they both there in the lightweight division. You had, of course, Floyd Schofield as a rising contender there, at least in the WBA rankings at the time, before he had his fight with Tevin Farmer. And you have Abdullah Mason that was, ranked at number 2 in the WBO before the whole thing with, of course, Keyshawn Davis, who was the WBO lightweight champion, ended up losing that belt due to, the weight issues and things like that, right? So, with that being said, hey, now you got Abdullah Mason here, pretty much next in line, lined up to fight. Sam Noakes said, in the interview, of course, he said, like, hey, with that fight being slated for November, right? He has, a little bit of time here before he's going to be in full camp, getting ready for that particular fight against Sam Noakes. And that's going to be a good matchup there between those two. But, for the time being, Mason is like, hey, I'm focused on that fight coming up here against Sam Noakes. And then, anything, comes up when it comes to Floyd Schofield Jr., then, hey, we could revisit and see what's happening with that. Now, on the flip side there with Floyd Schofield Jr., of course, he's coming off of his first round knockout win over Tevin Farmer. And now he is rated at number 1 in the WBA lightweight rankings. And with that being said, you have the WBA champion as Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, of course, there's been some buzz about, hey, potentially having Floyd Schofield Jr. petition the WBA to become the mandatory challenger for Tank Davis's lightweight belt there with the WBA. But that still remains to be seen. I've been, trying to pursue or follow up with that to see if they are, intending on doing that. And, with Tank Davis looking like he's going to have that fight there with Lamont Rose Jr. in August. Yeah, I know it hasn't been announced yet, but listen, we got, fighters in camp or they're not in camp or whatever it is. All I know is Lamont Rose Jr. is in camp. He's out there down by Plant City, Florida, over there around where the Pro Box gym is and everything like that. So, hey, it looks like, they trying to, have a few things lined up here and there before they, put out the official announcement and whatnot. So that's what we got going down, man. Shout out to my guy L-Dub Boxing in the building here on the live chat, man. What's happening with you there? Shout out to L-Dub Boxing. Of course, check him out. They're on YouTube as well, talking boxing. All the events has been going down, week to week. He got his info on that, and he be, keeping tabs on the rankings when it comes to the sanctioning bodies too. So, you get check him out with that right now. But back with this thing here with Floyd Schofield Jr. I mean, either you got what could be happening here with Tank Davis. They look like they're having that rematch there. Hey, all I know is with that rematch over in Las Vegas, they still have a date there. August 16th. It's still out there for the Vegas State Athletic Commission. So I mean, there's that right now. With that being said, if you have the instance where Tank Davis wins against Lamont Rose Jr. in the rematch, then we could potentially see Tank Davis and Floyd Schofield Jr. And before Tank went on a what do you call it, like a social media hiatus, he did make a comment about Floyd Schofield Jr., if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be a lot to kind of like go through or go over when it comes to the lightweight division. Here with Abdullah Mason, like I was saying, you got Floyd Schofield, you got Tank Davis, you got Lamont Rose Jr. Hey, and Lamont Rose Jr., like I said, he's hard at work. He already got a episode out, when he's out there, like like I said, between Plant City and Orlando. So we got an episode out on this channel. So he's working because he's locked in for this rematch, man. Because he don't want that whole thing with the draw and pretty much like be it when it comes to him and big fights are concerned. So he wants to show that, hey, he is, that guy that could really give Tank Davis some trouble and could hand Tank Davis potentially his first loss here in the pro ranks. So we're gonna see how that all sells itself out. We just like what I would say 7-8 weeks away. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Shout well, question here. Do you think Tank will give Kid a shot? Man, now that's the question though. That is the question. You know what I mean? Because with Tank Davis, at least at this particular point in his career, or at least I feel like at this particular point in his career, is big fights or nothing. And even though it's Tank Davis, and it don't matter. Usually, it don't matter who the opponent is. It's still going to be like an event with Tank Davis. More and more fans are going to ask for those big and high-profile fights that they've been, looking at for the past couple of years. Of course, they want to link him with Shakur Stevenson, who has his bout coming up, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But also there might be another couple of other potential opponents that could be out there. And yeah, I know that there was a little bit of a rumor that was out there after his last fight against Morell Jr. there on March 1st at the Barclays. But man, I'm just being real with y'all. I hope that fight never ever materializes. Just being honest with you, I don't want that fight with this particular opponent. I don't even want to have that come up. I really don't feel like that should come up one way or another. You know what I mean? So we got that. But still, with this whole thing with Mason, like I said, he got November, Sam Noakes, WBO lightweight title. Floyd Schofield Jr. coming off of his win against Tevin Farmer, first round knockout there at Anaheim, California. So he's looking at, maybe he could revisit something there with Shakur Stevenson, because you had, of course, Oscar De La Hoya after the fight saying that, maybe you could have Floyd Schofield against the winner of Shakur Stevenson, William Zapeda. And of course, William Zapeda is, Oscar's guy there for the lightweight also. But, he's going to be backing Zapeda in that fight against Shakur Stevenson. But we'll see how that one turns out. But here with Schofield having a lot of momentum, of course, Abdullah Mason has been, one of the, highest or fastest rising young fighters out there, 21 years old. So I'd say we got a lot of good action out there when it comes to the lightweight division. And hopefully, though, but for me, hopefully it all stems with all of these guys fighting each other. Usually the lightweight division had those guys within the top 10 of the lightweight rankings fighting each other, whether it was like number 1 versus number 4, or number 2 versus number 6, or, number 3 versus number 8. You used to have that like over the past few years, and it pretty much like ended after Devin Haney fought Vasily Lomachenko. After that, you really didn't see that many, top 10 matchups. Hopefully that gets resurrected, here pretty soon, and that we see more of these good matchups there around the top of the lightweight division. So you got that there coming up. All right. So with that being said, wanted to get to the next topic here real quick. Big ups for everyone listening live here on YouTube. This is Boxing Source Podcast. If you enjoy the content, hit the like button, hit the share button. If you want people to like I said, listen into this, and if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, man. We trying to grow up the subscriber base here. We got lots of content here, at least on the YouTube channel. Got a number of interviews here, and as I mentioned before, we did have the conversation there with Abdullah Mason. Got like 2 parts on that, so you'll be able to listen to both of those. That's available on the YouTube channel here real quick. All right, bet. So now we got some events coming up this weekend in New York City. Of course, we got, Ring 3. That'll be Saturday over in Queens, New York. A lot of people saying, like, why in the world are they having it in Queens? I don't know. But, hey, it's happening in Queens over in the tennis stadium there, Louis Armstrong Stadium, not Arthur Ashe Stadium, but Louis Armstrong Stadium. And, now you just had something come up here with, of course, Turki Alalshikh, and he says, hey, we gonna says Turki Alalshikh makes a statement that the ring for Saturday night's event will shrink. Pause. During the Stevenson Zapeda fight, like, man, I don't know why. Just being honest with you, I don't know why he's been coming up with these statements, man. You got, of course, the whole Tom and Jerry comment that he was talking about. You have, now this coming up. I mean, it's like what's going on here with this? So I wanted to see if I could, share this thing on the screen here real quick through the YouTube joint, right? So here we go. We got Turki Alalshikh going on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? He says, we have a surprise there for Shakur Stevenson on Saturday. A ring that, come on, man. Ring that shrinks as a fight goes on. I don't know how he gonna pull that stuff off. That's gonna be crazy. That's gonna be absolutely crazy. You know what I'm saying? He says Shakur says that he's ready to deliver a beatdown to William Zapeda. And I know the Mexican is prepared for the challenge of the biggest fight of his life. All right, that's what Turki Alalshikh says, right? All right. So, with that being said, it should be a interesting fight, of course. There, William Zapeda has been like a long-time top contender there in the lightweight division, and yeah, this is one of those top fights there in the lightweight division, as I was mentioning before. But I want to see more of these type of fights. I want to see more of them. Used to have a lot of them, over the course of the time when Vasyl Lomachenko and what it was, Teofimo Lopez and Richard Comey and all them were in the mix and all that type of stuff. Jorge Linares. They had like a lot of those top 10 fighters fighting each other. Devin Haney was in the mix, you know what I'm saying? Teofimo, they were all fighting each other. Now, after all that, you ain't really seeing that much. But here, I want to see what's going to be going down Saturday night here with Shakur Stevenson and William Zapeda. All right. Both of them undefeated. Both of them undefeated. And Zapeda does, have a pretty good knockout ratio, so to speak, or whatever it is. And, he's known for, breaking down a number of his opponents, has been known to throw a lot of punches, over the course of fights. So, my thing is that will we see Shakur Stevenson have a great performance here against William Zapeda, of course, with Stevenson there at 23-0, William Zapeda at 33-0. You know what I mean? So I want to see, how this is going to turn out for both of these fighters. But Gorgio says, hey, Turki is trolling. Not literal. And he was trolling Dan Rayfield and Mike Coppinger too. Man, I wish that second one wasn't the case. Just being real with y'all, I was hoping that second one wasn't the case, man. You know what? We need to get some of these reporters in the ring. I don't care if it's an exhibition or nothing like that. We need to get them in the ring. You see them, they talking boxing, they doing these reports and all that type of stuff. But you know what, though? I want to see if they got, some work, if they done some work in the gym or anything like that, you know what I'm saying? Or hit a heavy bag or hit the speed bags, you know what I'm saying? And get in the ring and get some action. You feel me? But that whole thing with Dan Rayfield and Mike Coppinger, I don't know, man. You can have like Dan Rayfield, Mike Coppinger, Keith Idec, right? Jake Donovan, you know what I'm saying? Who else? Who is it? Campbell, you know what I mean? You have a couple of them, you know what I'm saying, in the ring. And listen, I don't care. I might mix in with them too. You know what I'm saying? I might, give them a couple hooks, uppercuts, you know what I'm saying? Get them in with the jabs or whatnot. But I don't know. Maybe it should have some exhibitions. Yeah, Lance Brookmeyer too. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You should have him on there, Lance on there. There was one time, man, that there was like a reporter, from some years back, you know what I mean, that a lot of people would want to step in the ring with. And he had like some type of either exhibition fight or an actual fight or something. But that still didn't deter people to saying that, hey, they wanted some action with this certain reporter that, was had a lot of hate, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Kim J Network here in the live chat, man. Salute to you, man. You know what I'm saying? Big up to you for joining in here on this conversation. All right, but back to this joint here with, as I say, Shakur Nafisa, he's Stevenson, right? All right, so as of right now, I mean, I've seen the odds for this. It still has like Shakur Stevenson around like a 10-1 or 11-1 favorite against William Zapeda here. Even though you may have William Zapeda as he's listed as a taller fighter, I would say. He's there around like 5'9", and they have a longer reach. But they feel like with the with Shakur Stevenson being, the WBO featherweight champion. He was a unified super featherweight champion, WBC, WBO, of course, having that win over Oscar Valdez, and then being able to acquire, the WBC title here for lightweight. You know what I mean? Yep, L-Dub, you got it exactly right. You got it exactly right. But this, they say this might be, one of the biggest fights for Shakur Stevenson. But with the odds, being that far ahead, what I'm saying, 10-1, 11-1, I kind of like agree with those odds. Even with the press conference that happened some time back when they initially announced this card, I was like, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if this particular fight is similar to Shakur Stevenson's fight that he had against Oscar Valdez. Where he was able to see what was going on in those first few rounds, and then after that, just take over and nullify everything that Oscar Valdez does. And speaking of that, he had like a conversation with, of course, former multi-time champion there in the welterweight division, Showtime Sean Porter. He was talking with Rick Reno of Ring Magazine, and he said, like, hey, I seen, Shakur Stevenson, doing sparring, and he had like one fighter that had like a particular style, and after some time, he nullified that, and then another guy came in there, pretty much like having a similar style to William Zapeda, and Shakur Stevenson was able to nullify that, and that's why I'm feeling like this could happen. That could happen here in this bout coming up on Saturday night. But if Shakur Stevenson has a performance to the level of where he could not only nullify Zapeda's style, but overwhelm him and end up having him stop like a TKO type of thing. I'm not saying that he could have like a KO, like a, put him on the canvas type KO, but I'm talking about like flat out embarrass, William Zapeda to where it's like William Zapeda is completely frustrated, doesn't feel like he could do much, and like goes to his corner after the end of like maybe the 9th or the 10th round and just says something like "fuck it," you know what I'm saying? like he said, I ain't going back out there, man. Like this, I can't do nothing with them. I can't touch them. It's no point for me to go back out there. Like I wouldn't be surprised if something like that could happen. But for me, I got it like 10 rounds to 2 for Shakur Stevenson there. If it goes, the 12 rounds in him, retaining that WBC lightweight title. We got, of course, a number of fights that's going to be part of this, fight card. Of course, you have there with the thing, WBC super lightweight title on the line as well, man. And that, I'm really waiting for that. That, to me, I feel like that's going to be the fight of the evening there on that front, when you're going to have Alberto Puyo defending his title against Suber and Matias, right, for the WBC super lightweight title. Alberto Puyo, of course, has, the decision wins over Gary Antoine Russell, and you had Sandor Martin with that split decision win as well. That was on March 1st at Barclays Center. And so now he's going up against former IBF champion there out, Suber and Matias. And Suber and Matias, of course, after losing his bout against Liam Parrow, getting back in the mix, I want to see if he, his style is going to be something that, Puyo could deal with. But, with Puyo is like one of those guys that could, have that type of keep away type of style to where, someone like Suber and Matias that could have like a high guard trying to approach his opponent will take a few shots in order to throw a few. Like, as long as Puyo is able to utilize the ring and move around the ring, very well, then, he should be able to have a good, win here on this front. Now, I think I was out there for Puyo's fight what he had against, Bacher Akhmadov back in 2022, right? That was at Hollywood, Florida, man. Yeah, I was out there for that. And, it was something there where it looked like he, pretty much like outboxed Bacher Akhmadov. but it ended up being another one of those split decision specials, man. Hey, I'm telling you, man, looks like Alberto Puyo is the king of the split decisions. He does a few things well, but not well enough to kind of like separate himself, a good range from his opponent. So he's had a number of split decisions there where he's ended up getting a win. It's almost like a George Kambosos Jr. We had a whole bunch of them split decisions, but but after that, it was you had Kambosos step up in class, like you seen that he won that that type of thing. But here with Puyo, he has that win over Gary Antoine Russell. He has that win over Sandor Martin. Now you're seeing here if he could get this win over Subriel Matias, and if he does get that win over Subriel Matias, that could be a strong case for him to be in the top fighter there in the super lightweight division. I mean, he has those more impressive wins there. He's so far at 140 pounds in comparison to the other world champions that are out there. You know what I mean? Shout out to MMA Boxing Addicts there in the building. He says he hopes that Puyo wins, but Subriel ain't no joke. Yeah, he ain't no joke, man. He ain't no joke. That old school Subriel Matias, man, I'm telling you, like when he just breaks down his opponents, what is it, like 22 wins? All of his 22 wins that he has are by way of knockout. So he's never, won by decision. It's all been a KO or a TKO or anything like that. He was also in action there on March 1st, but it was over in Puerto Rico, and he got a TKO victory over Gabriel Valenzuela, on that fight card over there. But yeah, he just wants to make sure that he's able to close the ring and just beat down his opponent. So I want to see if he's going to be able to properly cut off the ring against Alberto Puyo, because we got Puyo there. I think he's the the taller fighter there. Yeah, but he's able to know how to use the ring, utilize the ring, and move around. So he should be able to see if he could do that against Subriel Matias. Shout out to Ant McQueen there in the building. He says that Puyo got to take advantage of those earmuffs. You know what I'm saying? Similar to how Power did. Exactly. Put the e-brake on and don't let the car get out the driveway. Gorjo says for this fight card coming up on Saturday, he has David Morell Jr. versus Imam Katayev as his fight of the night. Spectacular fight. Yeah, of course, David Morell Jr., he's going to be coming off of his bout against David Benavidez. That was February 1st in Las Vegas there. And, I'm kind of happy that, he's right back in the mix. Sometimes, when you have a fight of that magnitude, even though it was a very good action fight, man, that was a great fight to watch live out there, at the T-Mobile Arena. But he ended up falling short on that one. But now he's right back in the mix here, going up against Imam Katayev, and with Katayev, he's there undefeated, run the same amount of fights. Morell got 12 pro fights, Katayev got 10 pro fights here. But with Katayev, having a lot of his fights, over in either Canada or over in Australia, like that's something there, man. You from Russia, right? But then you staying in Australia, and you've had like a good number of your pro fights over in Montreal, Canada, or something. You know what I mean? So, that's a crazy combination there. Just be real with y'all. That's a crazy combination. But I think it's going to be a good fight. I think two kind of contrasting styles, so to speak. There, of course, with Morell, he's kind of like a boxer puncher. Katayev there, like I said, 10-0 with 9 of those wins by way of knockout. So all but one of his fights ended in a knockout. So that's going to be another barn burner to look out for in this Ring 3 fight card over in Queens, New York. Like I said, I don't know why they put it out there though. Just being real with y'all. You know what I'm saying? Be afraid to let them hands go, man. Yeah. Hey, what's going on? Legacy remains here in the live chat. Salute to you. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, Z Pacino in the building says, yeah, Katayev is a tough dude. Yeah, that's the thing about it, man. He's a tough dude there. What they got him at? Listed at 5'10. You know what I mean? 5'10. And David Morell, they're at 6'1. I tried to see if I could catch up with David Morell Jr., but I won't be able to. At least I don't think I'll be able to. Unless maybe I get something for tomorrow. But I think that he's going to be already over in New York City here by now, and I know that his head coach there, his head trainer there, Coach Ronnie Shields, he said that he'll be out there by Tuesday. So how he usually have the weekly conversations there with Coach Ronnie Shields. Well, yeah, this week, we're not gonna have him on because he's gonna be there in New York City. So I'll be able to catch up with them there on Saturday, for all of that. But yeah, that's gonna be another good fight there on slate, for what's going on. And like I said, you got the main event there: Hamza, Shiraz, Edgar, Belanga. They're in the super middleweight division, of course, which Shiraz has been a contender there in the middleweight division, but now going up to super middleweight to face Edgar Belanga. And that one is a pretty interesting fight. Edgar Belanga, of course, was a former world title challenger there against Santos Alvarez Barragan. Yeah, Canelo Alvarez. And yeah, he says, "Hey, man, I went 12 rounds with Canelo. Had a ticker tape parade and all that type of stuff, or whatever it is. Man, I don't know what that was all about." And then he faced somebody out there at the Caribe Royale Resort there when he fought Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz. It was a run round knockout. Man, I was out there for that. I was like, man, I don't understand how. I don't know how they found that opponent. I know what was worked out. You know what I'm saying with Matchroom and Edgar Belanga, and of course Keith Connolly. They're the manager there for Edgar Belanga. But to find that opponent, man, that was crazy, man. He had been out the game for like 10 years. He had been in jail for 10 years, and y'all found him. Like that was crazy. But now you're gonna have Edgar Belanga here back going up against his opponent Hamza Shiraz. And Shiraz, man, he had that whole thing with the WBC middleweight title fight against Carlos Adames earlier this year. And some people so that hey, he probably could have. He just looked like they were trying to get something with him. You know what I mean? Because hey, Carlos Adames outboxed him. He outboxed him, straight up for the majority of those rounds. It didn't seem like Hamza Shiraz was doing much of anything until like the 9th or 10th round, and by then it was like way too late, and it still ended up being a draw on the scorecards. So, man, that should have been a win. That should have been a win. Just being real, it should have been a win out there for Carlos Adames, but ended up being a draw. But now you're gonna have Shiraz in the action here against Edgar Belanga, and it's gonna be interesting because it's like just saying I don't see like either fighter doing something great, having a great attribute, and so it makes for a I would say interesting fight. I'll just word it that way. It'll make for an interesting fight. Okay. I don't know if there'll be a knockout. I ain't guaranteeing all that. But there might be some type of moments, in that joint, man. Right now, jeez, hold up. I'm checking the odds right now, and they got it. Damn, they got it even. They got it even on Cesar's and on FanDuel. Nah, dog. Whoa. Nah, that can't be right. Hold up, that can't be right. Nah, I gotta check that on the update, man. You know what I'm saying? Because I know some of y'all, y'all can partake on the numbers, when it comes to these fights and the odds and things like that. But I ain't not see that this was a pick'em type of fight like that. I thought it would be at least a little bit close, but not like a absolute pick'em. So I'm trying to check it here. Okay, they got Edgar Belanga at plus 110, and they got Hamza Shiraz at minus 135. Okay, so there you go. They got Hamza Shiraz at minus 135. This is on DraftKings. All right, so that's something. It's his first fight here around 168 against a world title challenger at Edgar Belanga, and they got people putting in the money for Hamza Shiraz on that. That is insane, yo. Oh man, that's something there. You know what I mean? And you always talk about the whole thing with Stevenson and Zapeda. Like I said, 10-1 favorite, Shakur Stevenson. So I don't know if y'all trying to put it down, put the money down for Zapeda. Yeah, I don't know about all that. I had my guy Ed McQueen here in the building earlier today. We was on there with the Rise podcast. Like I said, Coach Squeeze, celebrating his birthday there. You know what I'm saying? We had, of course, Senior, all access there, and Coach Kenny Ellis and Coach Calvin Ford was on there. We had that conversation, and we said, hey, who we got for the fight? And Ed McQueen said, hey, he got Stevenson by stoppage. I said Stevenson 10 rounds to 2. And I think Coach Calvin was going to flip and say that he picking Zapeda because Coach Kenny said he's picking Shakur Stevenson. Oh man, shout out to Bounce Back 22 on the live chat here. He feels like Shiraz is the favorite because Shiraz is a better boxer than Edgar Belanga. Yeah, you could say he is a better boxer than Edgar Belanga. You know what I mean? I guess that is all he would need here against Belanga on this upcoming fight, man. But like I said, Taylor the tape, they got Shiraz there at 6'3" with a reach of 75, and Edgar Belanga is there at 6'1" with a reach of 73. Of course, he had the Belanga having a run of multiple knockout victories until he went up against the best at it, Damon Nicholson, there in the 8-rounder, and then he had those string of decision victories before having to win against Pedrick McQuarrie and getting that fight with Canelo Alvarez. So, man, yeah, I wonder if that number, that odds are going to move there more towards either Belanga's favor there to make it more even, or if they're going to still put money towards Hamza Shiraz. Because I'm kind of surprised that they're putting the money towards Shiraz and having him as the favorite, man. I got to see if they got more details on this joint, man. I don't even know if they say that it's supposed to be the main event because Belanga's there from New York City and all of that, but they say, man, they say percentage of bets placed on the thing with the DraftKings at 65% is placed on Belanga and 35 on Shiraz. So big money is towards Shiraz. It's a lot of money towards Hamza Shiraz here for the win. That's crazy there on that front. But that's mainly what we got on slate for that upcoming fight card there. Those 4 fights that I had mentioned. They got like what is it? Susumi there. That's gonna be having, I think, his 3rd pro bout. They pushing that Susumi guy. We saw what happened there in that Times Square joint, man. I thought he was gonna have an easy bout. Nope, it went the full the full joint there. So he had won by decision on that one. I was like, this Susumi guy really that dude? You know what I'm saying? Is Rito really that dude, or what's going on here? So I don't know. But yeah, it's supposed to be 6 bouts scheduled on that fight card. So we just looking forward to all of that and what's going down with that and what's going on. For Saturday night there at Louis Armstrong Stadium in Queens, New York. But that ain't the only thing that's going down in New York this weekend. Of course, we have Madison Square Garden Friday night. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano 3. Of course, it's an all women's card there at Madison Square Garden. It will be shown live on Netflix there. And the main thing for me is like, hey, will there be a different result on Friday night when Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano fight for a 3rd time? First fight, what was that? April 2022, Madison Square Garden was an event, a great event there at that time. Shout out to, like I said, Most Valuable Promotions there, along with Matchroom Boxing, was able to put that together. And was a close fight. Had Katie Taylor winning that fight by decision there. Had the rematch there last year where, was part of that Jake Paul, Mike Tyson joint. A lot of people were able to watch that fight on Netflix. ended up being another decision win for Katie Taylor, and a lot of more people felt like Amanda Serrano won that fight. Now we got this third fight going down, and listen, if Amanda Serrano don't get this one, then you might as well just pack it up. You might as well pack it up. You feel me? Because like I said, the first fight was close, and some people felt like she won that first fight, but that second fight, he definitely felt like she won that second fight. You know what I mean? And they still had it in favor of Katie Taylor. Now it looks like we got to see what's up with Amanda Serrano, if she's going to have the effort to be able to get the win this time around and be able to be like undisputed champion on this one. You know what I'm saying? Because you got that as the big headlining fight out there at Madison Square Garden, and that one, they got a good amount of people that are going to be there in attendance at Madison Square Garden for this fight, because it's a whole event. Like I said, it's all women's card picked up by Netflix. So we got a multitude of undisputed title fights, couple of unified title fights is going to be on this as well. So we got a lot of action there, not just with Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, but you got Alicia Baumgartner, defending her titles there in the super featherweight division. You're going to have Ellie Scottney there against Yamila Mercado in the super bantamweight division. That'll be for the world titles. You got Savannah Marshall against Shadeja Green in the super middleweight division. That is going to be a good fight there in the super middleweight division. I'm focused on that fight because, we had as a previous guest here, whether it's through the Boxing Source or the DMV Boxing Network, you had the unified champion there, Franchon Cruz-Zern, who, was able to defend her unified titles last month. So now she's going to be paying attention to this fight and seeing if the winner of this fight will fight her for the undisputed titles there in the super middleweight division. You know what I'm saying? So you got that coming up here, real quick. And then with that being said, we got what else we got that's on slate. You got Chantel Cameron that's going to be fighting Jessica Kamara. You got Ramla Ali on this fight card. You got what else? You got Shanika Johnson versus Sharetta Metcalf. That's going to be another big bout there to look forward to on Friday night. So it's a bunch of action that's going on, bunch of action that's going down, and things like that. So you're definitely looking forward to that coming up here on Friday night in Manhattan. You're in the middle of Manhattan. So you're going to have 2 fight weeks, basically going on in Manhattan. The thing for Saturday, all of the fight week events are going to be at the Hard Rock in Manhattan, and then you're going to have the press conference, the weigh-in and all that type of stuff here for this Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano joint coming up here during that week too. So it's going to be a very busy week there over in New York City. You know what I'm saying? So we got all that coming up. I wanted to see here if we could get this thing going to have some more boxing talk later on down the line here on the Boxing Source podcast. But that's what I wanted to go ahead and cover on that front. You know what I'm saying? So we do have that. What else we got on a slate here as far as like stories are concerned? Now this one here, of course, is coming from earlier in the week. This is oh my goodness. Like when I saw this initially, when this came out, I was like, y'all gotta be kidding me. Y'all gotta be kidding me. But it just went on, it went down and all that type of stuff. And that type of thing. So this is what I wanted to, go ahead and jump in and talk about here. So hold on just a minute. All right. So Julio Cesar Chavez was arrested on Wednesday for criminal activity and could be in Mexico for good. What happened? Man, I have no idea how this came up after Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. had his bout with Jake Paul. You know what I mean? That's the thing. I was like, he had the fight against Jake Paul that previous Saturday, and then all of a sudden you have something where it says that he gets arrested and then detained by ICE. That, like, come on, you know what I mean? So I wanted to, because I had posted an article on this here, so I wanted to see if I could go ahead and add this joint on. So hold on, I'm going to see if I could do this here, on the live joint here, where I pretty much like posted the article and stuff like that on this front, right? So I'm going to see here if I could drop the banner here real quick. So it says like the Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. on Wednesday morning, as it was reported that he was someone, quote, who has an active arrest warrant in Mexico for his involvement in organized crime and trafficking firearms, ammunition, and explosives, unquote, according to a press release by the Department of Homeland Security. Oh, man. So that is like something there, you know what I mean? Because I was like, wait, so he had an active warrant in Mexico, but he was still able to not only fight, basically had that fight, there against Jake Paul that weekend, but have that all of that stuff that happened that week, and all that stuff going on. And he was allowed to do that. And then after all of that was said and done, after everything was cleared, now they go ahead and arrest him. That's crazy. That was something that was absolutely crazy. You know what I'm saying? And it was almost like, to me, it was almost like he was saying, okay, y'all go ahead and let that fight happen. Y'all go ahead and let him, be able to get this money. But once he's done with all that, all right, we got him. We got him. So that's why I'm like, how are you able to have someone, if you say that he has an active warrant for this type of activity at this level, and he's still able to fight? Now, given the statement that was there from the Department of Homeland Security, there was much more outside of what was there in this initial quote, because it had some activity that was going on in 2023. They said that he wasn't really supposed to be in the U.S. in 2024, and he still had that fight in Tampa Bay against Uriah Hall on Jake Paul's card that was there last July. So if he was still doing all of this in 2023 and 2024, how are they able to just now be able to get him for this in this part of 2025? We're already halfway through 2025. You know what I mean? We're already halfway through that. So how is it that it took until now for them to do this with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? Yeah, I know about the whole other thing there with the Sinaloa cartel and his presumed involvement with the Sinaloa cartel. But if he was like that much of a danger, like say, for example, if he was that much of a danger to society, why did it take this long for them to, go and get him? And I know that there was like a statement made by, the press secretary there in reference to all of this. Wanted to see if I could follow up with all of that too, but I don't know, man. That to me was just something that kind of like got me really thrown off and whatnot. So I was like, I want to see if the Department of Homeland Security will be able to, respond to my request to follow up on this particular story. But when it was like initially reported, I just couldn't believe it, because they arrested him like at his house or something. You know what I'm saying? That it was reported that the house was in his name and all that type of stuff. But they still say, hey, we don't care. We gonna go out there. We're gonna roll up. We're gonna get him and arrest him and all that type of stuff, man. So, man, that I just felt like that was like absolutely crazy. You know what I mean? So that's all I wanted to touch on that. And then one more thing here, on Slater on the docket. You know what I mean? We got Mario Barrios, of course, has his big fight here with Manny Pacquiao coming up on July 19th. So he had his media workout last Monday, and he's all ready and geared up, ready to go for the bout against Manny Pacquiao, defending the WBC welterweight title. It should be an easy win for him, right? Why I don't know. I don't know why it seems like there are a number of people that put a good amount of faith behind Manny Pacquiao to get this win over Mario Barrios. I just don't see how that's going to happen. Okay. This isn't like, George Foreman versus Michael Moore in the mid 90s. It's not like that. It's not like that. Because with George Foreman was just there. Like, he's a big dude that you gotta really like, work to break him down. And at the time, Michael Moore couldn't do that. Here with Mario Barrios, he's going up against Manny Pacquiao, who hasn't had a professional boxing fight since August 21st, 2021 against Yordenis Ugas, where he lost by a unanimous decision. And a lot of the fight fans know about that picture with Manny Pacquiao and his wife, feeding him. And that type of scene right there was like, nah, you knew that he was gone, he was done, it was over, it was a wrap, and all that type of stuff. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, now it's like people are trying to get excited and amped up that Manny Pacquiao is back in the ring and he's able to fight for a world title against Mario Barrios. And Mario Barrios isn't overlooking him. He's treating it like, hey, what? It's like he's going up against an active fighter, like the fighters that he fought in the past there against Yordenis Ugas, who beat Manny Pacquiao. He was able to get a unanimous decision against him, and was a clean unanimous decision against Yordenis Ugas back in 2023. Then he had his fight against Fabian Maidana last year, but then the whole thing with the Abel Ramos fight kind of threw things off. He had a great start to the fight, was able to knock down Abel Ramos in the second round, but then when he got knocked down in the sixth round, everything started to change, and it was like he had to really work to get through those 12 rounds, and then it ended up being a split draw. So I guess maybe that particular result against Abel Ramos has some people, kind of like doubting Mario Barrios, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Shout out to Bounce Back 22. He says, dope show, free Chavez, and shout out to the cartel. Okay. All right, yo. All right, back to this thing here with Mario Barrios and Manny Pacquiao. Did a little bit of a report there, you know what I'm saying? And as I was mentioning, Mario Barrios getting ready for his bout against Manny Pacquiao. And, we had a conversation with some of the media members out there for their media workout and talked about the magnitude of the fight, fighting a legend like Manny Pacquiao and, getting prepared in camp for this particular bout of this magnitude. You know what I mean? So I feel like he's going to be able to properly execute well. And if he has like a great showing early, this might be a flip to when Manny Pacquiao fought Oscar De La Hoya, and pretty much where Manny Pacquiao just beat up Oscar De La Hoya. Hey, don't be surprised if you see something like that here come July 19th in the main event. But Mr. Bell here says if Pac-Man's punch resistance is there, it might be a surprisingly good fight. Hey, I mean, that's what a number of people are hoping for. They're hoping for a good fight here for this main event because, for the pay-per-view portion, they got a good set of fights there, out for this thing here. You got the rematches, 2 rematches with Fundora versus Tim Tszyu. You got Isaac Cruz versus Angel Fierro. Those 2 rematches, of course, they were 2 great bouts that happened. You know what I mean? That Cruz Fierro bout that was on February 1st in Las Vegas, man, that was a crazy bout. That was a crazy bout. That's why, they had like went so fast to, request for a rematch because it was that good. I think, it was a strong candidate for fight of the year, at least for me, because I felt like that was something where I saw, Isak Cruz doing a couple things that I didn't expect him to do. You had Angel Fierro being game for this fight. So, I love that fight. If it wasn't, for the main event, there with David Benavidez and David Morell Jr., that would have easily been the fight of the night there on that front. You know what I'm saying? So that, makes for this to be a good card there on the pay-per-view portion of the fight. But then we got what's going to be on the prelims there that on Amazon Prime Video, as we got the return of the former WBC featherweight champion, Mr. Gary Russell Jr. is back in the mix there. You know what I'm saying? So you got that's going to be happening. One of the, put that up there real quick as we have a question here on the slate or on the docket. So you got Gary Russell Jr. there against Hugo Castaneda. You got David Alamacaso versus Kayonosuke Kameda. You got Mark Magsayo there against Jorge Cuellar. So you got Gary Russell Jr. on this card, and he's back for the first time since his bout against Mark Magsayo years ago. So it's going to make for a pretty good night of fights there in Las Vegas. And of course, with July 19th, you got a whole lot of boxing going on. You got Bam Rodriguez there against Fumulele Cafu. You got, of course, an undisputed heavyweight title fight that's going on at Wembley Stadium. Alexander Usyk, Daniel Dubois rematch. Shout out to the Topic TV here real quick. He says, what are the keys for Manny Pacquiao to win? Ooh. If he still has quick twitch when it comes to his punching, like, quick twitch, it got to be something that Mario Barrios doesn't expect. It may be similar to, how Keith Thurman didn't expect Manny Pacquiao to, throw that combination that led to the knockdown early in that fight. It might be the way that I feel like Manny Pacquiao might get something there to, get a win in this particular bout, is that he surprises Mario Barrios early and potentially gets a knockdown, a flash knockdown of sorts, and maybe that could be it. But I just feel like, Mario Barrios, having the experience that he's had here recently, it's just been that bout against Abel Ramos that has like a number of people in doubt. But I just feel like there with Mario Barrios, he should be able to win this fairly comfortably on that front. So there you go on that joint there, right? So that being said, I mean that's what I had here on the docket here for this particular episode of the Boxing Source podcast. Wanted to see if I could get my guest in here, but I thought that he'd be able to join in with the link or something like that. So that's what I'm trying to wait on here. So let me see. If they're able to get in on the conversation here. If they're having issues, then maybe I could, extend it a little bit. If anybody has like additional questions on, what's going on this week. Of course, like I said, you got the Madison Square Garden events, and you got, of course, there with the Ring 3 fight card that's at Louis Armstrong Stadium. Topic asks, can Dubois upset Usyk? Yeah, he can. I feel like he can. The thing is, he's almost like he took the juggernaut approach. Of course, he had Joe Joyce as the juggernaut, and Joe Joyce was able to stop Daniel Dubois early in their careers. But now it's Daniel Dubois that has been able to stop Jarrell Miller, Philip Hergovich, and Anthony Joshua. And now he's here in this rematch against Alexander Usyk. And, I feel like it's more about him for him to have his key to victory, so to speak, is that he might have to take a few punches in order to dish out, because we all know that he has more, more power than Alexander Usyk does. But he gotta, see about being more precise in his punches, and still work the body. But I would say just come forward, and if Usyk, is still in front of him, go to the body. If he attempts to, move away from the line of sight, throw the hook to the body. You know what I mean? Because you're gonna be going up there against the, like I said, you have the southpaw and Usyk, right? So he's gonna be, kind of like trying to use distance and things like that, tap and move around, probably use the lead hand. Well, it would be the right hand there, as he's southpaw. Use the right hand to kind of like get the distance from him. You know what I mean? And once he does that, then he'll be able to try to move away from the line of sight there from Daniel Dubois. But if he keeps that lead right hand out, either throw the left to the body or just go across there with the right hand. You're the one that's supposed to have the reach over Alexander Usyk. So if he's trying to keep the distance away from you, just continue to throw forward. If you can't basically do that, then you might have a little bit of issues as trying to get to him before he moves out of the pocket. So I would say prevent Usyk from moving out of the line of sight as much as possible, particularly early if you can, because that's the one thing about Alexander Usyk is he has good foot movement. There, of course, being now at a heavyweight, of course, he's a former undisputed cruiserweight champion and has been the undisputed heavyweight champion. But his foot movement has been timely against a lot of his opponents, against Anthony Joshua, against Tyson Fury, against Daniel Dubois in their first fight. So we got to see if Dubois can nullify that movement early and try to go to the body early. I would say with hooks to the body, whether it's left hooks or right hooks. If he's going to have Alexander Usyk with his lead hand or his lead foot, pretty much with the right foot, right? Then I would say try to throw the left to the body, because he's going to use that lead foot and try to step out from his back foot, So that's the thing about it. It says, I think that Dubois retires Usyk. His confidence is through the roof after his last win there against Anthony Joshua. So we'll see. Like I said, I mean, I feel like it's more about him, being, psyched up. He's more psyched up, when it's the actual night of the fight. But, during these press conferences, Daniel Dubois is like, one of those happy-go-lucky type folks, man. It's like I don't know how to explain it. To be real with you, I don't know how to explain it. But he just gets himself psyched up, during fight week, and then night of the fight, he's ready to go, And so this time around, I feel like with his trainer there, Don Charles, he should be. Have a good strategy in order to properly see. I want to see if he can cut off the ring. That's what I want to see from Daniel Dubois. If he could cut off the ring, limit the movement, off to the side that Alexander Usyk will have, whether it's, stepping back or stepping off to the side with his back foot, which is going to be his left foot, so to speak, then he could really get to Alexander Usyk and then eventually break him down. So I want to see if Daniel Dubois is going to be able to do that. That being said, that's what I got, or at least here so far for this edition of the Boxing Source podcast. Once again, thanks to everyone that's been able to listen live. If you're catching the replay here through audio form or here on YouTube or whatever it is, big thanks for listening there on that front. Might be able to have some more conversation here later on. Here because I want to see if I could get more people to chime in on a few other topics here when it comes to boxing. So if we could do that, then you'll be able to see me here on these these YouTube channels or whatever it is. But if not, that's all for me, at least for now. We're gonna have a couple of things here for the midweek report scheduled for Wednesday evening. Wanted to see if I could get a guest in for the midweek report, and we may have something for Twitter here also later this week. So that's what we got in the works here. But hey, like I was mentioning before, be sure to check out that interview with Abdullah Mason that we have on the YouTube channel. There, you should be able to enjoy that, as we were able to mention earlier here on the podcast. But until next time, folks, I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.